Welcome back to Chapter 8, the second half of our data subject rights story. Last chapter, the individual could see, correct, freeze, and delete their data. Today, they take control of decisions and destinations. Here's the agenda. We start with consent under Article 7, what makes it valid, and why so much of the consent collected on the internet would crumble under scrutiny. Then it's mirror image, withdrawal, and the golden rule that leaving must be as easy as entering. Next, we enter the age of algorithms with Article 22, the right not to be subject to solely automated decisions with significant effects, plus the safeguards around profiling. If a machine can reject your loan application, this is the article standing between you and the machine. Then, data portability under Article 20, the right to take your data and move it elsewhere in a usable format. And we'll carefully distinguish it from the right of access, a comparison the exam adores. We finish with the limits, Article 23 restrictions that member states can impose, and the practical handling of manifestly unfounded or excessive requests. By the end of today, you'll hold the complete map of data subject rights. Let's finish what we started. Let's talk about consent properly, because it might be the most abused word in the digital economy. Everyone claims to have it, far fewer actually do. The GDPR sets 4 conditions, and all must be met. Consent must be freely given, specific, informed, and an unambiguous indication of the individual's wishes through a statement or clear affirmative action. Let's pressure test each one. Freely given means genuine choice without detriment. If refusing costs you the service unnecessarily, or if a power imbalance looms, think employer and employee, the freedom is fiction. Specific means per purpose. One consent for newsletters is not consent for profiling, sharing, and telemarketing bundled invisibly together. Informed means the person knew who is processing, what data, and why before agreeing. An unambiguous affirmative action means somebody did something. Silence is not consent. Inactivity is not consent. And the exam's favorite, pre-ticked boxes are not consent. The Court of Justice said so explicitly in the Planet 49 case about cookie checkboxes. Article 7 adds the operational rules. Requests for consent must be clearly distinguishable from other matters in clear and plain language, no burying it inside terms and conditions. And critically, the controller must be able to demonstrate that consent was given. No records, legally no consent. Here's my consulting story. A client proudly showed me their marketing database, 800,000 consented contacts. I asked one question. Can you show me for any single contact when and how they consented and what they were told? Silence. We spent 6 months rebuilding consent properly. Collect it right the first time and log everything. Consent has a twin sister, and her name is withdrawal. The GDPR's position is beautifully simple. If consent is the individual's power to say yes, it must include the power to say no more at any time without penalty. Article 7, paragraph 3 lays out the rules. Withdrawal must be possible at any time. The individual must be informed of this right before consenting, so it's part of the informed package from the start. Withdrawal must not affect the lawfulness of processing already carried out, so the past stays legal, only the future stops. And the rule with teeth. It shall be as easy to withdraw as to give consent. Let that last one sink in with an example we've all lived. You subscribe to a newsletter with one click. To unsubscribe, you must log in, navigate to settings, find preferences, confirm twice, and wait up to 10 business days. Under the GDPR, that asymmetry is a violation, full stop. One click in should mean roughly one click out. Regulators have acted on exactly this pattern, especially around cookie banners, where accepting takes one tap and refusing takes an expedition. Now, what happens after withdrawal? Processing based on that consent must stop. And here's the trap I want to arm you against: the basis switching temptation. A company loses consent and suddenly announces, actually, we're continuing under legitimate interests. The EDPB frowns hard on this. Choosing consent as your basis was a commitment. Swapping bases when consent fails is unfair and undermines the entire meaning of the choice. Pick the right basis before processing, not the convenient one after. Design your systems so withdrawal actually propagates to your marketing tools, your processors, everywhere. A withdrawal that only updates one database is a complaint in incubation. Now we step into the algorithmic age. Article 22 exists because of a simple, unsettling scenario. A machine makes a decision about your life and no human ever looks at it. The right reads, individuals shall have the right not to be subject to a decision based solely on automated processing, including profiling, which produces legal effects concerning them or similarly significantly affects them. Three elements must all be present. So let's dissect. Solely automated, no meaningful human involvement anywhere in the decision. A decision, not just analysis or scoring in the background, an actual determination. And significant effects, legal consequences like a contract denied or a benefit refused, or comparably serious impacts, exclusion from a job opportunity, credit denial. Picture the classic cases. An online lender's algorithm declines your loan in 3 seconds. An automated recruitment system filters out your CV before human eyes ever see it. Both are squarely Article 22 territory. But the right isn't absolute. 3 exceptions permit solely automated decisions. When necessary for entering or performing a contract, think instant credit scoring that makes online lending possible at all. When authorized by EU or member state law with safeguards, like automated fraud detection required by regulation, or with the individual's explicit consent. Here's the crucial catch though. Even when an exception applies, safeguards are mandatory. At minimum, the right to obtain human intervention, to express one's point of view, and to contest the decision. The machine may decide first, but a human must be reachable on appeal. And one more layer. Decisions based on special category data face an even narrower gate, essentially explicit consent or substantial public interest. Sensitive data plus automation is the highest risk combination the law recognizes. Let's zoom in on profiling because it deserves its own spotlight. The GDPR defines it as any automated processing that evaluates personal aspects of a person, analyzing or predicting things like work performance, economic situation, health, preferences, interests, reliability, behavior, location, or movements. Read that list again and realize profiling is everywhere. Your streaming service predicting what you'll watch, your insurer estimating your risk, your bank scoring your creditworthiness, an advertising platform inferring your mood at 9 p.m. on a Friday. All profiling. Here's the layered structure to hold on to. Profiling by itself is regulated processing. It needs a lawful basis, transparency, and all the principles, but it isn't forbidden. Article 22 adds its special protection only when profiling feeds a solely automated decision with significant effects. Recommendation engines suggesting films, fine with a basis. An algorithm auto-rejecting tenants, that's the protected zone. Now, the safeguards in practice, and this is where I've seen organizations fail, interestingly. First, meaningful human intervention must be real. If an employee clicks approve on 200 algorithmic recommendations per hour without authority or information to deviate, that's a rubber stamp, and regulators will treat the decision as solely automated anyway. The human must have actual competence and influence. Second, transparency about logic. Individuals are entitled to meaningful information about how the system decides, its significance, and its consequences. Not the source code, but an honest explanation. Your postcode and payment history mainly drove this score. Third, ongoing model hygiene. Recital 71 expects measures ensuring accuracy and preventing discriminatory effects. Test your models for bias. Document it. An algorithm that inherited historical prejudice from its training data isn't neutral. It's automated discrimination. And the accountability principle means you must be able to show you checked. Now for the most modern right in the catalog, data portability, the GDPR's gift to competition and user freedom. The idea in one sentence: your data shouldn't be a hostage that keeps you loyal to a service you'd rather leave. Article 20 grants two things: the right to receive your personal data in a structured, commonly used and machine-readable format, and the right to transmit it to another controller, including directly from controller to controller where technically feasible. Think of switching banks and taking your transaction history along, or moving your playlists between music services. Same spirit as porting your phone number. But the scope is deliberately narrow, and here's where exams get precise. Three conditions stack. The processing must be based on consent or contract, not legitimate interests, not legal obligation. It must be carried out by automated means. Paper files don't port. And it covers only data the individual provided to the controller. That word provided has an official interpretation you must know. It includes data actively submitted, your name, your uploads, and data observed from your activity, your search history, location logs, fitness tracker readings. What it excludes is data the controller derived or inferred, the credit score calculated about you, the customer segment you were placed in, the churn prediction. The raw ingredients travel with you. The controller's analytical cooking stays behind. On formats, structured and machine-readable means something a computer can actually parse. Think spreadsheet exports or structured data files, not a stack of scanned images. One boundary completes the picture. Portability must not adversely affect the rights of others. Your exported chat history contains other people's messages, which is why responsible platforms handle those carefully. Freedom to move without dragging bystanders along. Let's put portability and access side by side, because distinguishing them is a certified exam classic, and honestly, professionals mix them up in real life too. Both rights hand the individual their data, so what's different? Almost everything else, and the differences all flow from purpose. Access serves transparency, understanding what's happening with your data. Portability serves mobility, taking your data somewhere else to reuse it. Walk through the contrast with me. Scope. Access covers all your personal data, whatever the source, including derived data like scores and segments, plus the surrounding information, purposes, recipients, retention. Portability covers only the narrower slice, data you provided, actively or through observed activity, and nothing the controller inferred. Legal basis. Access applies regardless of the basis for processing. Portability applies only when processing rests on consent or contract, and only if automated. Format. Access must be intelligible and accessible. A clear PDF can be perfectly fine. Portability demands structured, commonly used, machine-readable output, built for the next system to ingest, and even direct transmission to a competitor where feasible. Here's a scenario to lock it in. You ask your bank for everything, including why your loan was scored the way it was. That's access. You ask your bank for your transaction history in a file your new bank can import. That's portability. Same customer, same data pool, two different rights, two different deliverables. The professional insight underneath: when a request arrives, classify it before you fulfill it. Answering a portability request with an access-style PDF fails the format requirement. Answering an access request with a bare data file omits the mandatory contextual information. Read what the person actually wants, then match the right and its rules. We've spent 2 chapters celebrating rights, so here comes the reality check. Rights under the GDPR are strong, but not limitless, and Article 23 is where the limits live. The setup. EU law or member state law may restrict the scope of the rights and obligations we've studied through legislative measures. Notice immediately, restriction requires law. A company cannot invent its own exceptions because compliance is inconvenient. Only legislators can carve these doors, and only within strict conditions. What grounds justify restriction? The list includes national security, defense, public security, the prevention, investigation, detection, and prosecution of criminal offenses, other important public interests including economic and financial interests like tax matters, the protection of judicial independence, monitoring and inspection functions connected to official authority, and the protection of the data subject or the rights and freedoms of others. Concrete examples make this breathe. Tax legislation may delay or limit access rights during an active investigation. Otherwise, every audit target would file an access request to preview the evidence. Anti-money laundering law prohibits banks from telling customers a suspicious activity report was filed. Transparency yields to crime prevention there. But here's the discipline the article demands, and it's what stops Article 23 becoming a loophole. Any restriction must respect the essence of fundamental rights and be necessary and proportionate in a democratic society. And the restricting law must itself specify safeguards, the purposes, the categories of data, the scope of the restriction, the risks, and the individual's right to be informed, unless that defeats the purpose. Vague, blanket restrictions fail these tests, and the Court of Justice has struck laws down for exactly that. The takeaway? Restrictions exist, but they're precise surgical instruments defined by law, never a general excuse. Manifestly unfounded or excessive requests and balancing tests. Let's close the right story with the question every operations team eventually asks. What about the requests made in bad faith, the weaponized ones, the 15th identical demand this quarter? The GDPR has an answer, but it's a narrow one. Article 12 provides that where requests are manifestly unfounded or excessive, in particular because of their repetitive character, the controller may either charge a reasonable fee reflecting administrative costs or refuse to act. Two options and a deliberately high threshold guarding both. Focus on the word manifestly, not arguably, not probably, but obviously. And here's the allocation of risk. The controller bears the burden of demonstrating the manifestly unfounded or excessive character. Translation: if you refuse and the individual complains, you must prove your case to the regulator, not the other way around. So what actually qualifies? Excessive is most commonly about repetition. The same person requesting the same data every week when nothing has changed. Unfounded might be a request that on its face has nothing to do with data protection rights, or explicit abuse, someone stating they'll withdraw the request in exchange for money. What does not qualify, and I stress this in every training, is hostility, inconvenience, cost, or the requester being in litigation against you. An angry request from your legal opponent is still a valid request. Assess each one individually. No policies that auto-refuse categories of people. And when third-party data tangles into a response, remember the balancing skill from access, protecting others' rights through redaction rather than blanket refusal. Partial compliance with explanation beats total refusal almost every time. The mature posture: treat refusal as the emergency brake, documented, reasoned, rare. Organizations that default to helpfulness win with regulators, with courts, and frankly, with customers. Rights handled gracefully build the trust that privacy programs are ultimately for. And that completes the full rights catalog. Take stock of what you now hold. Consent and withdrawal, the human backstop against automated decisions. Profiling safeguards. Portability and its careful boundaries. The lawful limits of Article 23 and the narrow escape hatch for abusive requests. Combined with Chapter 7, You can now field essentially any data subject request scenario the exam or your career throws at you. The usual checkpoint, and it's a quick one. If these chapters are earning their place in your preparation, subscribe to the channel. It unlocks this playlist and every other certification playlist we've built, and it directly supports more free, structured training like this reaching the community. Keep the sequence alive as well. Next, we shift from the individual's powers back to the organization's foundations, the lawful bases of processing in full depth. You've heard consent, contract, and legitimate interests mentioned repeatedly. Now, we dissect all 6 bases properly, and today's consent knowledge slots straight in. And for the structured practice that converts understanding into exam marks, our complete CIPP/E course on Udemy is ready when you are. Chapter quizzes, full-length practice tests mirroring the real exam style, role-play scenarios like judging a borderline automated decision case, and downloadable revision toolkits. The link is sitting in the description. Stretch, hydrate, maybe explain the access versus portability difference to an imaginary colleague as a self-test, and I'll see you in Chapter 9. The 6 legal bases await.